Hey there, this is Pat Ennis of Ennis Legacy Partners. Welcome to the Exit Readiness Podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Walter Dial, CPA and tax partner at GRF CPAs and Advisors in Bethesda, Maryland. Our mission here on the podcast is to provide you, the business owner, with subject matter expertise on topics pertaining to building transferable or sellable business value, and then planning your eventual exit from the business. We want to help you build a business that's transferable and then exit successfully on your own terms and conditions. Walter, not a few times have we mentioned over the last couple of years on this podcast how a very high percentage of business owners are actually miserable within 2 years of leaving their business. And, you might think that it would be largely due to the financial ramifications. Maybe they haven't been happy with how much money they've received, particularly if they didn't do any tax planning with you prior to the sale.
Right.
So you might think it had something to do or largely to do with the financial ramifications, but that isn't it, is it? At least most of the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Pat, because I was really surprised the first time I heard that statistic. I think it was from an old PwC study or something. I was really kind of blown away by that. But then, when you think about it, the clients that we work with, their business in a lot of ways is their identity, it's their purpose, it's what they believe gives them value. So, stepping back and thinking about it, yeah, that can kind of make sense. If an owner hasn't proactively considered the emotional and psychological aspects of the exit, I think you should anticipate there's going to be some struggles.
Yeah, and it's a key piece of exit planning that can, as we know and we've seen, that can easily get shortchanged or even completely neglected, but not today, because our topic today is, what am I without my business? And we have with us today an expert in this practice area, someone who is often referred to as the seller's whisperer. Okay, so buckle up. Denise Logan is an award-winning professional speaker and author of The Seller's Journey, a business fable about navigating the emotional obstacles to selling your business. Denise has addressed audiences on 3 continents about the psychology of business owners and how to make it easier for them when the time comes for them to let go and leave the business, transition out. For 20 years, she's been focused on the intersection of work, money, and meaning or purpose, and how they're all reflected in the legacies of today's small business owners. And so hence, she's been very successful in shifting the perspectives when needed of both business owners and their advisors in order to keep deals from falling apart, which we've seen happen. And she has a fascinating background. If you're ever able to have some time with her and learn more about her background, which includes building and leading a Washington, D.C. area law firm until she decided to buy a motorhome and run off to South America, I think. And to answer the question, what do I do with myself now? So Denise, welcome to the podcast.
It's so nice to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so I'm about 2/3 of the way through The Seller's Journey, your book, and I'm really enjoying it because too often, indeed, the exit planning world, in the world that we live in, is about facts and figures and strategies and deals and transactions and legal and accounting and all like that. And so the emotional part, which is significant, is often neglected. And so I think your book here does a really good job. It's an easy, fun read. It's in a fable, as I mentioned. But then too, I think it's going to be helpful not just for business owners, but for their advisors, just to the insights that you share in the book. So congratulations on your book.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that.
Yep.
So I wrote the book as a business fable, primarily because we get really focused on the how to, right? We can dial into, if I only make this particular adjustment, then I'll maximize my return, or somehow there's a formula to follow. And it's really not about a formula. And what happens is when we get emotionally tangled up, sometimes that we look for the formula and there isn't one. It's about dialing into what's going on under the surface.
So Denise, after Pat's introduction, I think you've got to share with us how you went from Washington, D.C. area lawyer to what you're doing today in helping business owners and advisors navigate the business sale journey.
You know, in my early life, I was a mental health professional, and then I became a lawyer. And I sometimes joke that if I was a good mental health professional, I would have kept myself from becoming a lawyer.
Right.
And I built a firm in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. And, you know, one of the things I saw is that deals were falling apart for reasons that were not what was being said, including for my own business. You know, I reached a point where the firm had grown and I was ready to go. Actually, I was ready to go a long time before I let go. And each time I approached that exit for myself and I was burned out, ready to leave, other folks would say to me, "Oh, you're just burned out. Like, take a vacation, buy a sports car, get a house." Like, there were all of these other solutions. And I was young, I was in my mid 30s at the time. And I reached a point where I realized, no, it's time to go. I did a super ugly, choppy exit of my own business, merged it with a firm in the area, got rid of my house, and bought a motorhome. And I ran off. That was not a joke that Pat said. And, you know, for me, I thought it was going to be 6 months to clear my head. And it turned into several years where I traveled all over North and Central America with 2 little dogs in a motorhome with a car I towed behind. That is a whole other story, probably over a beverage. That may be its own separate book at some point. But, you know, one of the things that I saw while I was out on the road was that, so I was the one that did not look like the others, right? Most folks who retire have waited and waited and waited. One of the things that happened early on that trip that I think started to change the way I thought about work and business, I was on a caravan trip with, I don't know, 30 or 40 other RVers, and we went to Rocky Point, Mexico, Puerto Penasco. We had all of our RVs facing out onto the Sea of Cortez, super beautiful. We went into town to have supper, and one couple didn't show up. And they didn't show up, they didn't show up. And someone went back to the RV park, and he had died and had a heart attack in his motorhome.
Oh my gosh.
It was their very first trip. They had retired 2 weeks earlier. And I said, no, there's a different path. And so many times we wait and assume that, well, we will know when to leave, or we'll know how to leave. So I came off the road. I was here in Phoenix, where I live now, visiting with friends. And a longtime acquaintance of mine said, "So you're driving around like a bum doing nothing?" And I said, "Wow, is that what it looks like on the outside? Because on the inside, it's way more fun than you just described it." But he had a business he was preparing for sale. And he said, "Why don't you join us and help us build?" And over the next 10 years, we took that business to the market 3 times, and he could not let go. And I know there are plenty of your professional listeners who are just smacking themselves on the forehead right now, like, "Oh, 3 times you took that business." So I left and I did a research study to try to figure out what was going on with business owners. How could you end up like me and wait too long until I was literally ready to give my business away to exit, or be like him and go too early and not be able to let go? And the genesis of that research study and the result of it turned into the work that I've done over the last decade, which is working with individual owners and their advisors to help them navigate that emotional leap to let go. And it was the foundation for the book.
Wow.
It was a windy path,
Yeah, for sure.
a journey, to be sure.
So is there any quick explanation of why people do hold on forever, or is it just way too complicated?
Oh, no, there are lots of different reasons. So Let's see. One of the things that I like to ask owners early on, or that I suggest their advisors do, is what does work provide for you? What does work provide for you other than the money? Because the money is the first answer that usually comes. Folks will say, well, I like to eat, and so do my kids. But that's not what keeps business owners stuck. So if we were to look at that question, what does work provide us? If the three of us did a little brainstorming session just on the things that work provides for us, what do you guys think? What would come up for you?
I think, I don't know if status is the right word, but
Mhm.
it's neat being a professional in a, in a good industry and things like that.
Mhm. Yeah. What else? Pat, how about for you?
Yeah, the meaning and purpose, which I know you're going to get to, and that's absolutely true. I mean, at age 56, which was 6 years ago, I decided that I wanted to have a lifestyle business doing work that I could get really excited about and find meaning and purpose in for the rest of my days, how many ever days that's going to be. Because I love to work, and I always want work to be a part of what I'm doing for the rest of my days, no matter how many days, as long as I'm capable.
Mhm.
Because there is a meaning and a purpose and a significance in it, in regard to serving and helping other people. And so that's a big piece of it. Of course, the financial is always a consideration. But beyond that, I would say if I had to narrow it, it would be purpose and meaning.
Yeah, those are super important pieces. We also look at, well, just some tangible pieces. It is a place to go during the day. Here we are during coronavirus time. Many of us are like, oh, can I please get away from my spouse and kids and have somewhere else to go? Work provides that. It provides structure. For many of our clients and our business owners, it's their friendship, right? Their employees, their customers, their coworkers are their friends. It also, right, status is one of the pieces. We should be able to get somewhere between 10, 12, 15 distinct answers to that question. And the deeper, later answers are the more difficult ones. But those needs that work is presently meeting do not go away when we leave our business. Those needs need to get met somewhere else. Those are some of the things that come up late for our owners and scare them. So things like power, that's a late one that often people don't express, but it's under there, right? At work, you say, I want this done. It generally gets done. At home, not so much. And so we start to look at what are all of the things that work is providing for this person, and how will they get those needs met elsewhere? Can I tell you a story about an owner that struggled with this?
Yeah,
Mhm.
please.
So I'll give you a couple of different stories. And when you listen to them, think about who you might be in the story and where that shows up for yourself or with clients. Because while I'll use some dollar amounts for the deals, the reality is that the emotional arc that an owner goes through as they exit their business is the same whether we're talking about a $50,000 hair salon or a $500 million manufacturing company. So this particular deal was an $85 million sale. 8 weeks from close, the seller suddenly announced that he would not take a penny less than 9 times EBITDA. Never mind that he had already signed a letter of intent at 6.2. So the investment banker called me and said, I think my seller went crazy. I'm like, yeah, it sounds like it. Let's see if we can figure out what scared this fellow and what hidey hole he went into, and can we coax him back out? So, what I learned was that the owner's original plan was to sell the business, buy a sailboat, sail around the globe. You can get a pretty good boat for 85 million bucks. You probably don't need more than that. So, when I started in the process, what I learned was that his wife had said to him 2 weeks before he asked for this unicorn, she said, I'm not doing that. Are you kidding me? I do not want to be stuck on a boat with you far away from my grandkids. That's not happening. Can we agree, guys, that he is not coming back to the deal team to say the deal is off because my wife won't let me do what I want to do. That's not going to happen, right? Instead, he asked for something that no one could produce so that when the deal falls apart, it's not about him. So, what I did was some one on one work with husband and wife, brought them back together and created a solution where he would buy the sailboat and sail. And every 6 weeks, she would take one grandchild, fly to where he was. They'd do 2 weeks on land, building memories with the child. She would fly home, he would sail on. Boom, our deal was back on track, closed on time at its original asking price because it was
Wow.
not about the money.
Yeah, you know what? There's a key insight there too, because when we're doing this piece of our work, not this piece, probably certainly not to the extent that you do it, Denise, but we try to strongly encourage, if not insist, but at least strongly encourage the business owner to include their spouse in these kind of conversations, because oftentimes that's just not that they don't think to do that. I don't, because they're seeing it as a transaction, and they're not seeing all these other lifestyle ramifications.
Right.
And so, I think that's a key point that you just made, is to make sure to include your wife or your husband,
Mhm.
whatever it is, in these kind of conversations, because the results are going to impact the spouse every bit as much as the business owner.
This is the single largest transition in their adult life. And so we often refer to it, at least from my perspective, I will say this is a transition, not a transaction. And when advisors are able to focus on it from that perspective, we understand what's happening. Pat, you made a great point about including our spouse. And someone, whenever I've told that story, someone will say, well, why didn't she speak up earlier? And I always say, for those of you who are listening, who are married, do you raise your objections on everything that your spouse says? No. You're like, that might not even happen. I'm going to wait. We don't create an argument on the first time something comes up. What was really happening for them was even more than about the sailboat. If we drop down another layer deeper, what they were experiencing is called relational grief. So let's think about this, right? If you and I fell in love and we're like, oh, our life's going to be so great, can't wait, and then we have a kid or two, and what happens? We barely see each other, right? The kids are in and out, work is in and out. Then that last child scoots out and goes off to college, and we catch sight of each other and think, who are you? I don't even know you. I don't even know if I want to know you. That happens for lots of couples. If they're able to survive that, the business, excuse me, the business often serves that same role, that we are drifting apart, but we have this illusion, this fantasy that when we get the money, somehow everything will come back together. So, for a lot of our business owners, as they start to get close to exit, that awareness comes up where they're like, oh no, I'm going to retire. And what will I do? So, family business that reached out to me recently, multi generational. So, the son is preparing to take over the business from the father, and the father doesn't want to leave. And the son said to him, come on, dad. Mom has been waiting to travel all this time. She put her life on hold while you were running the business. Why can't you just retire and travel with her? And I said to him, that's why your dad is continuing to stay. You heard it right there. He said, well, he's kind of a homebody. I was like, yeah. So how is he going to be able to keep his homebody life if he leaves the business?
Mhm. Yeah.
Right?
So in the work that you do, does it as much become marriage and family counseling as it does coaching the business owner? Because, w- we'll do a certain level of what we're discussing here today, But when it starts to bump up on marriage counseling or family counseling, that's when, we're gonna just pull out of that conversation and bring someone like you in, I guess. Is that right? I mean, is much of what you do end up being marriage counseling and family counseling?
So I don't do marriage and family counseling, but what I will do is help, and it's what I suggest advisors do. When you spot something, that's when you bring someone in who does do that work, right? Or we get them the support. Let me put it in the context of another situation where you'll recognize this. So this was a young owner, 36 years old. He was selling a software company. He was set to net $16 million on the other side of the sale, which is a pretty good chunk of change for that time in his life. And one day he realized, who am I going to hang out with? All my buddies have jobs. And so he was, and that's a normal experience that lots of our owners face. So he was out shooting pool with his best friend, and he said that to his friend, to which his best friend responded, boo hoo, dude. I wish I had your sad little $16 million problem. That's a natural response. But what happened is that owner then felt shame. He felt ashamed that he was worried about this. And that problem went underground and started acting out under the surface in the transaction. So, what I can say is, right, some of the things that I'm raising, it's not about resolving them, it's about giving them space to say them. Because for an owner who then feels like, oh, I don't have the right to talk about this, they will look for another way to express that. And it might be a demand for more money, right? They will talk about what we make safe for them to talk about. Often, what I have seen happen is when an owner raises things like that, if an advisor hasn't done their own work around that issue, knowing how they're going to resolve this, they'll brush it off. They'll say things like, dude, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out on the other side. That's where we come back to it being a transition. If we put it into the context, sometimes I just use family examples because I think they're normal for us. We can explain them. Think about our children. We don't wait until the day our children turn 18 to talk to them about what they're going to do next. We don't say, so today's your 18th birthday. Hey, Walter, what are you going to do with yourself? We start talking about that to them early. So for lots of our business owners, the first time they're ever thinking about what comes next is when they're in the middle of this transaction. And it's a huge transition. And we need to be able to create space for them to talk about it. I wrote a column a couple of months ago called Scary Things That Go Bump in the Night. It was probably around Halloween time. And it was really those things that wake owners up, the cognitive dissonance of, I want to leave. Oh no, what am I going to do with myself? And that creates almost a herky jerky, I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, while they're trying to get used to it. I mean, I had that experience when I left my own business. I remember the day that the moving trucks were moving away from the building. They had all the furniture and the files and all the stuff going off to the new firm that had acquired my practice. And I leaned in toward the window to catch sight of the last moving van pulling away from the building. And boom, I smacked my head on the window. And there were tears rolling down my face. And I thought, I don't think I hit my head that hard. And suddenly I realized that wasn't why I was crying. Everything I had worked for was now gone. And I got what I wanted, but oh my gosh, I got what I wanted. And for the next several weeks and months, I would be at home out on the patio, enjoying a little time with a cup of tea in my garden. And all of a sudden I would think, oh, I have to tell, oh, that's right. That's not mine to tell anymore. That belongs to someone else. So what happens for our owners is that, right? They got what they wanted, but they also got the unexpected piece. So we can care for them better in the process leading up to and after the exit, because it is unfamiliar.
Yeah, so this is great stuff, Diane. Diane, you know why I called you Diane?
I do. So can I tell you a story about
Because
Diane?
I know who Diane is in the book.
So for those of you who are listening, the character in the book, because it's a fable, her name is Diane. And
Yeah.
can I tell you a story about how I got that name?
I just figured it was close enough to Denise, but why?
When I was when I was being born, so I'm 57. At that time, they didn't know boy or girl, right? And so my mom had a name picked out, and it was Diane. But the year that I was born, the most popular girls' song on the radio was a song called Denise. And it was playing over and over and over in the delivery room. And she decided that if I was a girl, she was going to name me Denise. I'm really glad the song she was not addicted to was Ramalama Ding Dong, because this could have gone so badly. But honestly, Pat, anytime anyone ever gets my name wrong for my entire life, they've called me Diane.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very funny. Never Debbie or
Hmm.
Donna, or it is always. So yeah, my real name is Denise, but I must have a little Diane still wrapped on me.
All right. So with the time left, two questions. I'm going to ask one, and then Walter will ask the last question. You mentioned a second ago, figure it out on the other side. A lot of times the advisors helping with the transaction, let's say it is a sale to a third party, and it's the $16 million guy that you just mentioned a few minutes ago, and he's struggling, and the advisors or team, all of us are saying, look, we're close, you're going to get your 16 million. You can figure that piece out on the other side at this point. Let's just get the deal done. Okay, so what are the if you were to give us 1, 2, or 3 dangers of waiting to figure it out on the other side? Because we see where two things can happen. The deal can blow up. We've talked to a lot of we work with investment bankers, so they tell us that a lot of times the deals blow up at the deal table because they haven't figured all this out prior. That's one thing. And then all of this plays into that sad statistic that we mentioned at the outset about most business owners being miserable within the last 2 years within leaving. So what are the few dangers that come to your mind about figuring it out on the other side, Denise?
That's a good question. I don't think I know how to answer that question. The dangers of not figuring it out, or the
Yeah.
ways to help figure it out. Which question would you like for me to answer?
Well, either.
Right. The dangers of not figuring it out
Yeah.
are, so we'll start there. The dangers of not figuring it out is that the owner is most likely to blow up their deal for something that looks like money or something else,
Uh-huh.
because it's scary to not
Right.
know. The other danger is they exit their business and they soon reinvest all that money in a new business. Simply, excuse me, excuse me, simply to get away from the emotional discomfort
Mm-hmm.
of not knowing what they're going to do with themselves. Probably the third one is that, um, owners worry about, I will sell my business and then die.
Mm-hmm.
Can they die of a broken heart, or can they die of boredom? Retirement for us will not be like retirement for our parents and grandparents. We are not going to be satisfied playing golf and waiting for Wheel of Fortune to come on. That's not going to feel like a satisfying retirement. And so, for most business owners, the sale of their business is the bulk of the assets that will fund their retirement. If they don't sell their business, they have no ability to harvest the wealth from the life that they've spent. And sometimes I hear advisors say, well, if this one doesn't go, they can always try again. It is so challenging for business owners to return to their business after they've made the decision to sell, if that sale doesn't happen. When a business owner is unable to return and jumpstart it again, that impacts them, their family, their employees, their community. So
Mhm.
for me, a failed sale is a tragedy. That is so much worse than just, oh, well, go back and start over, because the impact is huge and it ripples through. Me personally, I think that when an owner entrusts us with the sale of their business, this is their most prized asset. Other than their family, this is the thing they care about most. And we have a duty to see it through and to help care for them and to put them gently on the other side so that they do go on into a better life. So when an owner hasn't done this preparation work, I think as advisors, we can help them to do them.
Yeah, there's a lot at stake, as you just put it. And you mentioned earlier, it's the biggest transaction they're more than likely going to experience in their life, other than potentially if they are married, getting married
Mhm.
and having kids. This is a big deal. Um,
Some of the reasons, Pat, that owners don't deal with this is a mortality issue as well. I'll
mhm.
often hear an owner say, well, if I leave my business, and I always stop them, I say, the word is when, not if.
Yeah, we're 100%
Ev-
sure of that.
Every business owner will leave their business voluntarily or involuntarily.
Hmm.
And I sometimes hear owners say, well, I'll just die at my desk, or the only place I feel alive is at work. I wrote another column called Is Dying at Your Desk Tragic or Noble? You might guess how I came down as the answer to that. But we also assume that we will get the choice of when to leave our business. And that's not true either. So we often think, well, I'll know when it's time for me to leave, and then I'll be able to make that decision. And selling a business is not like selling a house. We don't plunk a sign down in the front yard and trucks full of people show up with cash to be able to buy the business. That process is many months, sometimes years, to be able to prepare a business for sale. So whenever someone says, well, I'll just know or I'll wait, you may not have the choice to wait.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, one of our continual refrains is if you wait until you're ready to
Hmm.
leave, more than likely, or it's a good chance your business is not going to be ready. Uh,
Right. Your
and
business might not be ready and you're not ready.
right, and you may not be ready either. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, and in regard to figuring it out on the other side, a couple of other things that come to my mind. If you wait until then, you could experience family disharmony, relational disharmony, a lot of different levels.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of your goals, personal goals, and values-based and legacy goals may not have been planned for practically. There's just a lot at stake, as you mentioned earlier. So this has been tremendous. This is a huge piece for an owner to realize success in their goals and their objectives being met, and it's often overlooked and neglected. And so we appreciate you coming on. We do have one last question for you, though,
I'm
before we
ready.
wrap up.
So Denise, what would you say to someone who is planning on selling their business this year?
Mm.
And they may have done some transactional planning, but they haven't done what you would call transitional planning.
Mm. Make sure that the advisors who you choose are as focused on the transition with you as the transaction. Of course, they need to be technically proficient, and you should be listening to that. But when interviewing advisors, you should also be listening for, are they paying as close attention to what this will be like for me as they are about the transaction? Choosing an advisor who will care for you through the process will actually help you make it through and land safely on the other side.
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you. What would you like to promote today? I know Pat's been raving about your book, so I assume that's on your list.
Hmm. Yeah, so the book recently came out in Kindle. It'll be an audio version probably in another month or so. I had it recorded by professional voice actors because I was not going to voice all the characters. And, if we just a little piece about the book. So, as I said, it's written as a business fable, but it's the story of an owner 1 year after he sells his business. And he goes on a trip across Glacier National Park with his banker, his lawyer, his wealth advisor, and the buyer who bought his firm. And I always say, they all come back alive. Don't be scared right now. You might not think that's the trip. But as they cross the glacier, they relate the physical obstacles they're facing to the emotional obstacles he faced in letting go of the business. So it's a way for an owner to be able to think ahead about what are the things that might come up for me and how might I be able to evaluate them, step through it, and choose the right advisors.
So I'm definitely have to read that after tax season.
It'll make you want to get your hiking boots on and get to
Right.
Glacier National Park.
Right.
So
Yeah,
how can our
you know
listeners
what?
get in contact with you?
It's not having that impact on me at all, Denise.
you're
I-
still like couch potato on
I
it.
have no desire to go look at a glacier. Zero.
Well, we'll get you out there. Actually, in
Not gonna happen.
2022, we are doing a special trip to Glacier for readers, which will be very fun.
Good for
So-
you. Send us some pictures.
Yeah. Very fun. So yeah, Walter, my website is deniselogan.com, and the book is available there, or of course, everywhere that books are sold.
Thank you very much. This has been fantastic. Really enjoyed having you on, and very, very, very helpful information. Thank you very much. And listeners,
It was my pleasure.
Sure. Listeners, if you would like help in maximizing the value of your business or planning for your eventual exit, you can reach Pat at 301-859-0860. And you can reach me at 301-951-9090. You can also access resources at exitreadiness.com, grfcpa.com, and nslp.com. As always, thanks for listening. And until next week on the Exit Readiness Podcast, this is Walter Dial and Pat Ennis signing off.